that is literally larger than the UFC worldwide.
I'm seeing one championship over F1, over NFL, over NBA, legit behemoths.
These guys come out and they just start throwing money around and start trying to be the UFC. The first thing you have to do when you start a business is know exactly who you are.
We're 180 degrees opposite in everything we do.
You see, it's not only a viewership war, but a cultural one.
Unfortunately, I feel that some organizations around the world, in the quest for the dollar, have thrown all morality and values out the door, disrespecting people's religion, death threats to their kids.
Breaking a bus with a dolly, beat up women, hit and run accident with a pregnant lady, steroids, cocaine. You know, organizations say, no problem, as long as you sell pay-per-view dollars, I don't really care.
They're selling fights. We're unleashing heroes.
All right, you want to fight? We'll fight.
When a guy like Eddie Alvarez gets KO'd, or a guy like Sage Northcutt gets KO'd, or a guy like Mighty Mouse gets tagged, you're showing the whole world what one is doing is kind of like the future of the sport.
And yet, at a certain point in time, the man who built it all was ready to burn it down.
I was within a day of quitting. I just remember thinking to myself after 3 years, like, this is going nowhere. And all I was doing was burning cash. And
Picked up the phone, I call my mom, and I'm like, Mom,
I think I'm gonna quit.
And my mom's like, you see? I told you, you should listen to mommy.
And obviously that hurt. I was taken aback. I thought she would spend an hour convincing me to follow my passion and live my dreams and all this stuff. And at the very end of the conversation, I remember very well, she said, why don't you just quit? I hung up the phone and I started thinking about, why don't I just quit?
I have mixed feelings about Thailand. Growing up as a child, I had a loving home and a family, and then it all disintegrated and went to nothing.
Charger was naughty. He often got into trouble.
I was sent to the principal's office more times than I can count. I was suspended for fighting, put in detention.
And I was always a mediocre student, probably bottom 1/3 of my class.
And so I always thought, oh, well, I'm not very bright.
At the same time, he has a strong sense of justice. He couldn't ignore meanness or bullying. So defend those people, he ended up fighting a lot.
And my mom was always in the principal's office.
Despite me being a total screw up.
the one thing she always said, she said, Chatri, you're gonna grow up to help the world. Of course, when I'm 12 years old, rebellious, I'm like, what is this motherly gibberish, right?
But not everyone was so supportive. I remember that breakfast as if it were yesterday. I remember the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the air. I remember how his hair was parted neatly to one side. I remember staring at the cracks on our wooden dining table. For some odd reason, he asked me that day what I wanted to do in life. It was the first and last time he would ever ask me. I answered softly that I wanted to be a doctor. He scoffed at me before ignoring me for the rest of breakfast. I remember that deafening silence that echoed between us. But despite all that, there is one thing that they bonded over.
So when I was around 8 or 9 years old, my father took me to Lumpini Stadium, which is the Mecca of Muay Thai. I walked in and
Thousands of people screaming and chanting, and
the atmosphere was electrifying. I watched the fighters in the ring. They moved with such grace and beauty and power.
Literally ignited something in my soul that I just loved. I guess it's the universe's way of telling you what you should be doing.
Right away, I wanted to do Muay Thai, and I came home and to my mom, and my mom's this very conservative Japanese lady. She said, absolutely not.
I didn't support Charger at all. I don't like grafting, punching, kicking.
But eventually, when I was around 13 years old or so, my father took me to CPO Tong Gym, which at the time was the #1 Muay Thai gym by far in the entire country.
Everyone was a monster and a beast in that gym. And here I was, a little kid trying to learn.
I remember my first day at Sitio Tong. The heavy bags were filled with sand, packed tight, because our grandmaster really believed in strengthening the bones and the shin. So every kick, my shins, my feet, it was just unbelievable pain. And I remember thinking to myself, it was going to be impossible. I wanted to quit. It was the toughest training I'd ever experienced in my entire life. But the crazy thing is, after the training, I never felt so alive.
The one thing that has really dawned upon me is how martial arts really is about the journey of continuous self-improvement. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It is not about fighting.
It changed me. It made me more humble. It made me more disciplined. It gave me a focus.
But just like the rest of Asia, Chatri's world was about to explode.
Probably the toughest time in my life was during the Asian financial crisis.
The Asian financial crisis hit in the 90s, and literally
2/3 of the banks in Thailand went under, and there's no such thing as FDIC insurance in Thailand. So when you lost your life savings, you lost everything.
It was a very, 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 very dark time in our lives.
Your dad went bankrupt.
Yeah.
He ended up selling fruit in the street.
Yeah.
What went through your mind?
And then my father lost everything, our home, our car.
We went from well-to-do to literally struggling for the next day's meal.
And I remember distinctly how there was no money at home anymore, and my parents were fighting a lot.
My father was a very prideful man, too proud to say sorry, could admit that he couldn't feed his family. Literally, he just walked away one day and just never came back home.
Leaving my younger brother, myself, and my mother, defending for ourselves with virtually nothing.
I was so scared and worried. I couldn't sleep.
I'd never seen my mom cry until that moment.
It was the worst and most difficult moment of my family.
To watch my mother not eat because she wanted to give food to her children.
Just cry hopelessly, sobbing in tears, and broke my heart in a million pieces. I'll never forget it. There we were, left with literally nothing.
But I also remember that was the last time I cried, because I was crying and I was like, man, like, I can't believe this is my life. And
I remember the exact words my mom used was, Chatri, this is wartime.
My mother said, Chatri, you're the oldest son, and it's your duty to rescue us or take us out of poverty. Why don't you go to America, figure things out, and try to bring the whole family out of poverty? And try your best to get into Harvard, and then you can get a great, stable job, and then you can bring the rest of the family to America.
I said to myself, there is no way in hell I'm going to let my mom down. I am going to be unbreakable.
And the only thing that I really had was my martial arts training, the mental strength, the discipline, the focus, the courage, and most importantly, an unbreakable will, a warrior spirit to conquer adversity in life.
The defining moments of our lives is what we decide to do, what we say to ourselves in our worst moments in life.
And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to see my mother ever cry.
So now, all Chatri had to do was get into Harvard.
But I didn't believe myself at all. I wasn't an academic in any way. I was, for the vast majority of my elementary, middle school, high school, I was bottom 1/3. So I didn't have any confidence in my abilities academically. But my mother, she said, Chatri, I really believe in you, and this is the path that the family needs to take. And I really thought, if I make a shitload of money,
if I could be really, really rich, then my mom would not suffer, and my younger brother wouldn't suffer.
So Chatri attends Tufts University first, and once he graduates, applies to Harvard Business School.
And I remember when I got the acceptance letter, I just thought it was a fluke, and I thought, there's just no way they made a mistake.
I got into Harvard, and I really don't know how. It was probably there were probably only 3 people from Thailand applying that year or something, and maybe I was the best out of the 3. I have no idea, just total fluke.
But Chatri didn't want to go.
I remember for weeks, I was telling my mom I'm not going to go because A, we don't have the money, and B, I'm not smart enough, and if I borrow money, I'm going to get kicked out.
And my mom just said, Chatri, I believe in you. When you go there, you'll figure it out.
Obviously, I believe in Chatri's capability and capacity.
She really believed me when I didn't believe myself, and
I don't want him to give up his opportunity.
That first week at Harvard, I came with a suitcase with all my life's belongings and about $1,000.